Hey, so I know that I stated I was going to upload my first video like 3 weeks ago. However, that specific video has become much more of a monster than I initially planned. So with that, I was working on another video when something unfolded in the news that actually tapped into the topic of the first video.
All is not necessarily well in the MAGA family these days, as some are very unhappy with the president and his administration over issues important to them.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
Wildly going on to claim that the Epstein files were actually written by many of his various perceived political opponents, including President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and, quote, the losers and criminals of the Biden administration.
That happens.
Yes.
Like, don't you misspeak about, like, thousands of hours of footage of adults having sex with children?
First, the Epstein files were on Pam Bondi's desk, then they didn't exist, then they were written by the Democrats, now they're just plain old boring.
Footage that the Trump DOJ said this is raw footage. This is unedited footage. It was likely documented.
Their new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, and my past supporters have bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker.
Now, ever since Trump's recent electoral victory, it's been common to see stories of a MAGA civil war in the media. You know, you had the HB1 visa situation, then you had the Trump-Elon feud, and partially connected to that was a light feud over the tariffs. And now we have the Epstein list, which, for those living under the Matterhorn, or perhaps watching this in the future, essentially revolves around Trump campaigning during his past election to release the Epstein files.
Release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
And then when in power, stalling and eventually not having the files released, and then even gaslighting his own supporters and the broader public in general over this whole situation.
Some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work.
As someone who was in the past a Trump supporter, I think this old drama around Trump's flip-flopping around the Epstein drama is an example of why I left the whole Trumpist movement a few years ago. Since Trump burst onto the American political scene a decade ago, he has very much always carried himself as an outsider elite. A member of the New York business elite since birth, and part of the real estate class that emerged during the city's resurgence in the 1980s, Trump has always carried a certain aura of being simultaneously elite while not being elite. A sort of commoner in aristocratic clothing. And this has very much been a core part of his appeal since walking down that escalator. You know, with him saying that he knew all the loopholes in the tax system and that he was going to close out as president.
Did you use that $916 million loss to avoid paying personal federal income taxes?
Of course I do. Of course I do. And so do all of her donors, or most of her donors. I know many of her donors. Her donors took massive tax write-offs.
So have
a
you
lot
not
of
paid
my
personal federal income taxes?
A lot of my write-off was depreciation and other things that Hillary, as a senator, allowed. And she'll always allow it because the people that give her all this money, they want it.
Like, tell me bro didn't have aura in that clip, like, come on. But alas, we never got that loophole closed. And you know, I'm not saying that presidential candidates fulfill all their promises. In fact, only one president, James Knox Polk, has ever come close to doing that. But I do think that this situation does illustrate the underbelly of this character of himself that Trump has manufactured, which is that this persona is largely fake. And this is exactly what we're seeing today with the whole Epstein thing. As someone who did research on Epstein back when I was getting into politics in 2018, as a then Trump supporter, I've always dismissed Trump's connection to the crimes done by Epstein. I pointed to stories demonstrating that Trump was basically one of only a few people to publicly distance himself from Epstein in the immediate aftermath of him being prosecuted for his crimes in the late 2000s. And of course, this in retrospect leaned hard into the Trump ain't your ordinary elite mantra. And even after I hopped off the Trump train a few years ago, I still basically maintain that position. What has unfolded in the past week has seriously jeopardized that position for me. So here is where this connects into the point of the video I'm making. The brain rot of political commentators. A huge issue in the American conservative movement since the 1990s, and frankly a lot of political movements in the West, has been the increasing outsourcing of political thought and action towards the political commentary class. These are individuals that serve as mouthpieces for their political movement and their associated parties. Long story short, these people are incentivized to not critique their side at all, or at least not in a manner that to suggest anything else besides tripling down on the rhetoric. Amongst the American right wing, this has become especially apparent, as conservatives in the West tend to vote in a single block and move in lockstep with one another. And what has unfolded as a direct result of this is that the right wing in America has garnered a lot of bad people and influences, since the logic has just become, no matter how bad they are, the left wing is much worse, we won't talk about them at best. Especially with Trump, who pretty much removed what remaining quality assurance the American right had, replacing it with basically just fealties of loyalty towards him. There are no often attempts to try and rationalize and even praise these things. Some Trump folks might get mad at me for saying this, but I mean, just look at some of the responses surrounding this whole situation. Charlie Kirk, who had talked on and on about this whole Epstein situation, is not just saying that he's just going to trust his buddies in government about it.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands.
Tim Pool is whinging about how they actually can't release the Epstein files since it would supposedly publish videos of children being abused. Cat turds meet writing Trump extra hard these days, and I mean, this is just a fraction of the guys that are falling in line.
And I'm going to make the case that even though there are unanswered questions about Epstein, it is in fact time to move on.
The grifter politicos are attempting to pull the wool over your eyes. You have to accept that. It is not a leftist position to state that, the Trumpist media landscape essentially operates on the basis that no one will criticize Trump, and that we should just reflect or deny any allegation that comes his way, credible or not. And that is very important here for a very specific reason. Whenever there's this really big thing that really damns Trump, like January 6th, the bizarre annexation threats with Canada, Greenland, and Panama, or even the tariffs, there's always a lot of Republicans, especially those caught up from the online freakazoid class of right-wing Politico, that will critique Trump for these acts and maybe even hop off the Trump train for a little while. Then, after like a week or two, quietly hops back on and downplays what had unfolded. As an ex-Trump supporter, and as someone who knows many Trump supporters in my personal life, I can confidently say that everyone who has been or was a Trump supporter has had this moment before. And if you deny this, then you are almost certainly lying, unless you became a supporter of his last week. Well, actually, even if you joined last week, you'd be undergoing this process right now with the Epstein stuff. Unless for whatever reason you secretly like abusing kids. And it's clear from Trump's actions of, oh, Epstein, you're still yapping about little Ro.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Then trying to unironically say that it was a list crafted by Obama and the Dems.
They were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden,
And then whatever the hell he said about the Epstein files by the time this video has come out. And just a constant cavalcade of gaslighting, let's again be real, from him, his administration, and the broader Trumpist apparatus, that there are essentially banking on your reaction towards this being the exact same. You'll whine about it for a little bit, then in a few weeks' time, you'll move on and be like Charlie Kirk. This has essentially been the strategy of Trump and his supporters in the broader American institutional right since he took power in 2017.
Hi, Glenn. Hi, Jason. I tell you what, guys, I feel really betrayed, and I feel really, really angry. We have a president who tells us to move on from Epstein because it doesn't matter. Are you guys still talking about this? Seriously? And yet he still talks about the 2020 election fraud. He talks about the Hunter Biden laptop. He talks about all this stuff from 5-6 years ago, and he tells us to move on from the Epstein trial or the Epstein case. People like me will not stop talking about this. I feel so betrayed and so angry. This is not what I voted for. If we do not stand up for the children of this country, we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. And I tell you what, I've also lost a lot of respect for a lot of people that are prominent figures in this country because they are saying, you know what, this doesn't matter. Like Carrie Lake came out on Saturday. She's like, you know what really matters is election fraud and post-election fraud. It's like, you know what, the children of this country really, really matter. How can we just sweep them under the rug and not care? Move on, America. Move on.
Travis, thank you for calling. Let me ask you, is there anything that could be said that would make you go, okay, that's as good as it's going to get for here?
I want transparency and I want justice. All them children, all those families, everything they went through, I don't want to know their names. I pray that God would be with them and give them some sort of peace if they could ever get it. I want transparency and I want justice.
Is there anything that anyone could produce to show you and have you go, okay, Epstein is dead, Gladwell is in prison, and that's the only justice you're going to be able to get?
I want evidence. Quit telling us that, oh, well, he killed himself and we saw everything. We have the information. By the way, it doesn't exist. Show us the information. Make me believe. Help me believe that he killed himself. Help me believe that maybe you don't have any evidence against people. Then show us that stuff. I do not trust the government at all. And yet they expect me to take their word for it. I'm sorry, you lost your credibility a long time ago, government. You need to start gaining the trust of these American people back.
Wow, that was some right horse shit. And some might say, oh, Glenn didn't explicitly say that he wanted to move on from Epstein. Yeah, not a valid point. Literally the first caller on this episode, he was doing the exact same thing of, oh, well, is there anything that could get you to shut up about this?
What if they came out and said, we have released all of the evidence?
No, they're still not going to believe them because there's still stuff that they told us they haven't released. So that's the problem. They have to be transparent.
Then he even did the bit of trying to deflect blame away from Trump towards Pam Bondi and the FBI.
What's wrong with you people? Why aren't you just satisfied by me saying there's nothing there? Well, because you didn't say it at first. It wasn't you. My problem really isn't with you. My problem is with Pam Bondi. My problem is really with the FBI and Pam Bondi. Who bungled this? I think it's Pam.
Like, he knows what he's doing here. Come on. I also just want to say this. All the shade and fire Trump's been delivering towards his own base when they have literally gone through so much just for him. Bullied like hell by their peers, have had friendships and families broken apart due to their beliefs. 5 of them died on January 6th in an attempt to overturn what they believe to be an unjust stealing away of the presidency from Trump. Many other rioters literally sat in solitary confinement for years. They're basically the reason why he's not behind bars at the moment. And this is how he treats them? Literally doing Hillary Clinton, basket of deplorable ass comments, calling them stupid and that he doesn't want their support.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net.
Buddy, if it weren't for the people that you're crapping all over at the moment, there's frankly a decent chance that you would have been executed for treason.
Are you always this pathetic?
Yes, he is. Actually, this particular scene from Hotel Hell is actually a really good analog for what's going on right now.
You dug the fucking hole.
Yes, we
and
did.
Put them in it. So they're fucked.
They don't have to work here.
Oh my God.
You know,
how dare you? You disrespectful, disgusting man. I don't think you realise how fucking lucky you are. Because if it wasn't for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, you'd be driving that RV miles away from here.
Have some fucking gratitude.
Have you said thank you once?
But alas, unfortunately that's not in his personality. He just views his own supporter base as trash to piss on and use for his own power, which in turn is used for his own vanity. Same thing with all these commentator grifters. And many politicians on, frankly, both sides, including the Republicans. And the past 2 weeks have thoroughly demonstrated this. I kind of like our boy Travis. He noted that Trump wants to whinge all day about rather dubious claims of electoral fraud, as acknowledged by Tucker Carlson. Literally just read the Fox versus Dominion lawsuit. They all perfectly knew that it was bogus, yet to this day they keep on regurgitating that narrative.
So we invited Sidney Powell on the show. We would have given her the whole hour. We would have given her the entire week, actually, and listened quietly the whole time at rapt attention. That's a big story. But she never sent us any evidence, despite a lot of requests, polite requests, not a page. When we kept pressing, she got angry and told us to stop contacting her. When we checked with others around the Trump campaign, people in positions of authority, they told us Powell has never given them any evidence either, nor did she provide any today at the press conference. Powell did say that electronic voting is dangerous, and she's right, we're with her there. But she never demonstrated that a single actual vote was moved illegitimately by software from one candidate to another. Not one.
As well as a several-year-old Hunter Biden story. But Epstein? Nah, it doesn't exist, and even if it did exist, it was crafted by the crooked Dems, but also doesn't exist, and you're a retard if you believe it. You're a retard if you want me to be more transparent about the potential abuse of over 1,000 kids. All those icky feelings about everything that he did, be the time that he couldn't accept being corrected about the path of Hurricane Dorian, and even went so far as to whip out a map on live TV with the false path sharpied in, to that horrible confrontation between Zelensky, Trump, and Vance, to his frequent gaffes that seemed to start rivaling Biden during his term, or whatever the hell Elon Musk is doing. Yeah, they get you to ignore that via the arts of ignoring, downplaying, or get galloping. Mix in with some genuine stories of media oversight and fabrication to retroactively vindicate their narrative. And you know, stuff like this provides insights into the type of movement that has been erected around Trump for the past decade. And as part of that, I want to point out that I am emphasizing Trump here, for he is the head of this administration. As part of the effort to downplay this whole scandal, people within the government and the Trumpist media space have slowly attempted to groom you into accepting that eternity, Pam Bondi is the fall guy. Or the fall gal. Now obviously Bondi's wishy-washiness on this whole situation is definitely concerning, but it's also important to point out that Pam Bondi is ultimately the AG of the Trump administration. Trump nominated her and has the power to get the Epstein files through her or someone else. And yet he refuses to do so. I mean, just look at how he's been avidly defending her during this whole fiasco. That in of itself invalidates his attempt to shift the blame onto her solely. This is going to be another tactic that the political commentator class again makes in order to fool you into believing that 2 + 2 = 5. Shift the blame or for everything wrong with the Trump admin to other people in the Trumpist movement, or at least other people Trump got into power. Be it Bill Barr, Kash Patel, Scott Bessent, an imaginary cabal of rhinos in the party, despite the fact that all Republicans on the federal level kowtow to Trump, you name it. It is not a left-wing talking point to say that there is an ingrained culture against critiquing Trump within the American right that directly led to this whole situation. Leftists describe the movement that Trump has cultivated around himself as a cult, and while I don't agree with that particular characterization, I don't think that most of the popular Trump movement is a cult, at least not any more than the left. The glazing that you see from some of your fellow right-wing commentators on this front remind you over the potential cover-up of the abuse of what the DOJ has estimated to be over 1,000 children is just out of a combination of meaningless partisan loyalty and an unhealthy thirst for money and attention. Much like Trump, as it has become increasingly apparent, they have little to no actual ideological beliefs, as politics is just a game to them to milk money and attention for, even at the expense of true justice. Again, over 1,000 kids. And this is a bipartisan issue. The politicals who control the political narratives in this great country, and frankly across the West, they can feign interest in actually discussing issues that pertain to solving the issues at hand, but fundamentally out of a combination of shocking ignorance in the subjects that they supposedly know a lot about, laziness, genuine hatred of the common person, and delusions of grandeur and moral superiority, among other things, don't really care about politics. All they care about is, Twitter dunks or drama mongering between each other. All this bullshit meant to give them a temporary sense of moral righteousness at the expense of our countries. This is fundamentally the main point of the other video, so I'll keep it short. But the survival of our countries is wholly dependent on you realizing that these men and women of the so-called political class, or as I nickname them, the keyboard caucus, are charlatans and hacks who couldn't give 2 fucks if their grifting actively harm their countries. Side note, this is coming as I'm editing this video. Just look at how many right-wing influencers desperately leapt at the opportunity to attack the Wall Street Journal over its story over Trump sending that body letter to Epstein, in spite of what's unfolding. Again, as further evidenced by the misallocation of blame solely towards Trump's advisors during this situation, the political pundits are looking for any excuse to throw this under the rug, even those who seem to be criticizing this. Now, Trump's cover-up of this has led to a sort of Streisand effect. We seem to be in a sort of golden age of Epstein conspiracy theories, with a lot of the more of the extreme ones regarding this whole situation gaining prominence. Personally, I think that there is some sort of Epstein file of some sort. It probably contains damning info on a bunch of people, including Trump, which is why he's waffling on this. Perhaps not evidence of him directly partaking in the activities with kids, although I'm doubtful at this point, but certainly activities are embarrassing towards him, or at the very least, folks he's on good terms with. That being said, if Trump really is correct in this department that this whole Epstein situation is a hoax or whatever, or crafted by the Democrats or whatever, then one ought to ask, why is he acting so weird, and why have these politicos spent all their time peddling a fake theory? Again, it's not leftist to suggest that. Yeah, Rouhani might have said the exact same thing, and yes, he and his party are using it for political maneuvering. However, they're using it because it's true. And that type of mindset is how you get headlines reading that the GOP voted against releasing the Epstein files. Either way, on a final note, I just want to say this. What they're doing with the Epstein files is not unique. Trump basically has full control over the executive now. Essentially, at this point, he and the admin is, to an extent, the deep state. Yet, we've only gotten waffling over these Epstein files. Just like we've seen waffling over these wars in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. I'm no leftist. In fact, what the left has done in the past decade is why I became a Trump guy in the first place, and why I didn't hop on the leftist train when I was done, like other ex-Trumpers. In fact, I plan on launching a third party next year, locally. For the Trump supporters out there, what they're doing is no different from what we've seen him do before. He has consistently lied chronically throughout his career, and you know this, deep down. The only lie he isn't telling this time is that he and his movement thinks that you're a bad person. And stupid. And the reason why they're doing all this stuff with Epstein right now is precisely because if you start questioning that, the narratives around him that you again probably deep down question will start to unravel. In essence, letting them go on this front will only deep down confirm what they think about you.